Around 30 hours into my first playthrough of Cyberpunk 2077, I made a bit of a discovery. If you look at the map for the world, there's a bunch of little icons. You've got a Ripperdoc here, an arms dealer there, a person to offer you work scattered around each of the city's districts. And sprinkled in between all of them is these little blue dots, telling you where you are in specific. Neat. But around that aforementioned 30-hour mark, I noticed that these little blue icons actually existed in the world, too, and they were always accompanied by these weird little box things. I finally got curious and approached one to see what this box thing was, thus learning that they're fast travel spots, and that fast travel is a thing. And I didn't feel annoyed or frustrated or anything like that by not finding out fast travel exists in Night City until 30 hours in, which for someone like me is kind of abnormal. I mean, I've played The Witcher 3, which has a near-identical system for fast travel that I pretty much use as often as possible, and in Skyrim, my very first objective, even above meeting Balgruuf, is to carriage to every hold to make further exploration easier, since no matter where I need to go after that, I'll have at least something unlocked nearby. Hell, in ESO, the way shrines that allow for fast travel to different parts of the world are the only objective I ever actually cared about, because finding a new one meant less time in the future spent wandering around some dumb forest or trekking through miles of open sand to get to where I'm going, and I would happily pay a gold cost to portal to one whenever I wanted rather than just walk 35 seconds to find one in the world to use for free. But in Cyberpunk, I never even thought to use fast travel, never thought about its apparent absence, which is weird. But weirder still is that after 70 more hours, a near 100% complete second playthrough, and, you know, learning it's a thing, I still don't use fast travel to get around Night City. Even though I have such a history of relying on fast travel to get me around open-world games, I've probably used it in Night City less than 5 times. And I think my distaste for fast traveling around Night City stems from this weird relationship I have with Cyberpunk as a game and a genre and with Night City in general because I love this world. It's just, I don't know if I was supposed to.
Feel the rhythm of the streets, neon lights and neon dreams, bloody face, they feel no pain when there's so much more to gain. Hunting season, if you will, tell me where'd you rather be? I can hardly see the moon, hope we'll get there pretty soon.
Cyberpunk opens with you choosing something called your character's lifestyle. You get 3 different options, from Nomad to Street Kid to Corpo, and honestly I would give you a little description of what these terms mean, but 90% of the description is already in the term. My first playthrough of Cyberpunk though, I chose the Street Kid lifestyle. It seemed right, kind of like a canon version of the game. Plus, I had just finished Edgerunners, so the inspiration was pretty strong. And when you start as a Street Kid, it's a pretty rough go. The full story isn't ever explained, at least I never got all of it, but the impression I walked away with was that Street Kid V made a small name for themselves in Night City, and then bounced to Atlanta to find their fame and glory in earnest, only to come crawling back when things fall apart on them. And while they have a few old contacts to help get themselves back on their feet, they literally can't even steal a car, a very minor offense in this city by the way, without everything going wrong. But this is when we're introduced to Jackie, and when things finally start going right, represented by this very sweet cutscene that shows V moving in with Jackie and his mother, the equally sweet Mama Wells, V and Jackie learning to work together as a team for all sorts of work that the denizens of Night City need done under the table, and the scene concludes as V getting their feet back underneath them, and getting their own place. If you choose a different lifestyle though, like Corpo, things are a little different. You start off working for someone who works for someone, but look, your cyber deck has all these stock readouts, and you have a illustrious office with a drawer full of drugs and an Easter egg, and you've got a prime side hustle as a fixer. What you also have, however, is a bunch of rival suits who have caught onto the shit your boss is trying to pull, and they've come to purge the department, and that means you too. But this is when Jackie takes us in, represented by him helping us talk the suit goons out of their very worst ideas and starting a very sweet cutscene that shows V moving in with Jackie and his mother, V and Jackie doing all of that work stuff I mentioned, and V getting the keys to their own place. The Nomad start, again, gives a different perspective, starting with V giving up life with their old clan the Backers and moving towards Night City in search of greener pastures. Now, a nomad alone in the world is a terrible thing, and terrible is about how well things are going for V. After being run out of the smallest town by a sheriff with the largest ego and being told not to contact his old friend from the Backers ever again, V's first mission sans his family goes equally terrible, as not even a hefty bribe at the border can guarantee safety for a nomad on their own. Everything falls apart, with success only achieved by the slimmest margins. But this is when we really connect with Jackie, and well, I guess you know the rest by this point. It's not some accident that every one of these stories converge at the same place. Every Cyberpunk story is the same. And that's not a dig or a weak point of the game, but I think a core driving message about the world of Night City, and the game uses these opening acts to display it. It's just, a place like Night City really only allows for one kind of story. There's this overarching theme, and it's not just about whether you pick Street Kid or Corpo, it hangs over every element of this world, and it's a story that's told at the street side and back alleyways of Pacifica, all the way up to the top floor suite of the nicest joint in town. Even above the clouds, they aren't immune. Just ask the Arasaka family. Every Cyberpunk story is the tale of desperately trying to be more than you are in a world that doesn't want you to succeed, doesn't care if you survive the attempt, and honestly would really rather prefer it if you didn't. I came into this game knowing that Jackie dies. It still hit. It hits because the game makes it hit, and not just in some cheap bullshit way where Jackie starts talking a big game about how great everything is going to be after the heist job. You have to talk to his mom. You were there when he died, and she probably holds you at least partially responsible for the death of her son, but she loves you too and can't just blame you, and I don't know how to have that sort of conversation. You have to go to his funeral and figure out if it's a good idea to bring his girlfriend, but not quite girlfriend, along as well, because Mama Wells really doesn't like her, but fuck. Misty lost someone too. And then you have to go through his things and try and decide which of these individual items represents the entirety of a human life that just wanted something more than the circumstances of his birth, as if you can just summarize that down to a single physical thing, but what else are you supposed to do in Night City? I typically choose the basketball. Everything gets worse when Jackie dies, when you're left to pick up the pieces. When you can see immediately that Night City doesn't care about you or the people you think are in charge. You work for Dex, sure, and Dex is a big name on the streets at the time, but Dex is just a fixer. Arasaka doesn't care about fixers. And once you're on your own, you realize you're dying. And it's pretty bad. Anytime you cough up this much blood in the middle of a bar, you know you're in trouble, but when you cough up this much blood this many times... I love this little scene when you first meet Johnny in your apartment. It doesn't track through the rest of the game, but it's such a great way of showing that you're two minds in one body, that your visions of him are just your own dying brain trying to make sense of what's going on inside it. And once that happens, I guess you're never really on your own. You're just stuck with a washed-up rocker boy terrorist that's slowly overriding your brain with his own, with neither of you having any real control over it besides the dichotomy of either taking pills to make the Phantom shut up, or taking pills to kill yourself. Which honestly, some might consider worse than being on your own. At this point though, the game opens up in a huge way. The lockdown on the starting district is lifted, and you're now free to move about the entire city, although the game doesn't exactly expect you to explore all of it. There's loads, absolutely loads of little gigs and side quests and small self-contained stories that have nothing to do with the plight of V and Johnny, but that you can place yourself in anyways. Pan Am and the Aldecardos have a huge side story, just like Judy and the Clouds crew do, but you only meet each of them for a single individual story mission. You only meet Judy because you need a BD tuned from someone Ev trusts, and Pan Am only gets introduced to help you grab Hellman, and after you get her car back so that you can heist a human, you can totally just bail on literally everything she needs personally. Hell, it genuinely took me the entirety of my first playthrough to realize that Takamura's vengeance quest and the quest of figuring out your shit with Johnny were technically separate things. It wasn't until the end credits where he sent me a message that I realized I had just bailed on him after the parade. One step further, you only meet River because Judy lets the Perales family know about you and tells them to reach out to you for help with their little problem of a low-profile death of a high-profile figure. Literally all of River's questline is totally optional. The thing is, though, that if you actually play through all of these stories, no one ever ends happy. Or at least, not totally happy. There's a whole lot of that not surviving the attempt thing I mentioned in these stories because Night City is a bad place. Full stop. Terrible things happen to people who deserve it, who don't deserve it, and anyone else who's caught in the gray. Right from the start, no matter the storyline we take or make on our own, we're told that Night City sucks. It's a meat grinder, it's a flesh market where you could catch a stray bullet at any time, and yeah, it is. It always has been. We can see Night City in 2023, and it's shit, and when 2077 rolls around, it's still shit, and it probably always will be shit. But I just can't help but love it, you know? When I play Skyrim or The Witcher, there's few things I want to do less than actually interact with and walk around the untamed parts of the world, but Night City, man, Night City just fucking gets me. The lights, the crowds, the fact that every motorcycle is an absolutely unchained Akira slide machine.
You sure? Jackie'd kill me if I got so much as a scratch.
So don't get any scratches on it.
It's the first time I've ever played an open world game that actually felt like it was a world, you know? And look, I know that just beneath the surface, this dude is just a hyper-simple AI whose entire existence is walking around with no real place to be up until the exact second that I'm too far away for the game to value rendering them, but I don't think Skyrim even has as many named NPCs as Night City just invented on the fly right here, and I don't care if you think that's an unfair comparison, like, oh, but Skyrim is so old, stop fucking releasing it then, Todd. When I get a scripted phone call upon leaving a building or having just finished a chat with someone, I just walk, like around the town. When Jackie calls to catch up about my chat with Dex, I can't stop myself, literally cannot stop myself from just walking around this little shopping area, which is already one of my favorite locations in a game ever because look at it, but I walk around it because that's what I'd actually do. When I get a phone call in my actual home, I basically just wander the entire property while I chat, and somehow it doesn't surprise me that V, as my surrogate into Night City, does the exact same thing. This world is just, it's immersive, it pulls me in, it makes me feel like I'm there, that I want to be there, and I know that's such a silly thing, but I'm so not used to it. This idea of actually buying into the world in my open world games somehow feels so brand new whenever I load into Cyberpunk. God, I would go bonkers and yonkers for a VR release because the aesthetics of Night City are undoubtedly my favorite in literally any game I've ever played. And I know, okay, I know that Night City is supposed to represent the hellscape dystopia of raw, unchecked capitalism and megacorps turning into basic politics with gangs in their pockets keeping the streets in check, keeping them exactly as the corporations want. But even after pulling his nephew out of Englewood Farm, River still can't help but comment on the physical beauty of Night City, and I just get it. Because when you really look for it, it's not just the lights and the crowds and the heights, but there's all these little pockets and small places in the city that just defy the city. When Ev dies, Judy has her put to rest in this little place up east. Judy says the basic area of where it is, but I still had to look it up because I'd never even been in the area. The only reason I ever found to come here was because of Judy's phone call, and it's not even a required story beat, but they still put cool things here to see. There's just something about seeing natural green in Night City that I love, and I love all of these little parting messages. You can find where Alt Cunningham is laid, for example, or at least where people think she's laid. If you wander around enough, you can find Ev. She actually shows up here after the phone call. I know it's a sad place, but I love that there's just this little pocket of green and quiet and solace in a place where that's not really supposed to exist. And I love that if I get on the highway, I can ride out into the desert. And there's a few things to do out here, sure. There's a few seedy motels to interrogate a suit in, some arms dealers just outside proper city limits, an old ghost town that never falls asleep again once you wake it up. But mostly I just like to look, watch the city at night. Maybe they named it Night City as a lampshade about how dark the world can be, but sitting out here on this bluff, somehow this place looks like every star in the sky to me. And I know. A huge, thriving city in the middle of a desert. It's all man-made, it's fake, it's a trap with bright lights as a lure to bring in new meat, grind it down, spit it back out. This city is just as fake as your chance of escaping it, and you're not the only one trying. People are desperate to get out of here. From V's street kid beginnings to the entire Pan Am family to Judy to even just random NPCs talking in the street. It really seems like the only people who actually want to be in Night City are the ones responsible for keeping people here as long as possible, because that's where the profit is. Or maybe, if you're Adam Smasher, the city lets you take the mask off and let your outside show what the inside has always been. But hey, at least there's neon. I think at the end of all things, I just have some really mixed feelings about Cyberpunk as a game and as a genre, and mostly with Night City as a world, and it comes with the strange understanding that I'm probably the exact type of person to get pulled into the worst of this type of world. Coming into this game, I think I expected it to be near unplayable. I remember stories from launch about quests just not working, and bugs that would prevent story progression, that would essentially brick your save, and if it wasn't that, it was just the game was just, like, not finished at all. But what I found instead was a story, and a world, and a cast of characters that I really, really like. And sure, it's a little scuffed, but that didn't stop me from binging this game like mad and continuing to play long after I beat it for the first time. I'm really glad I played Cyberpunk, and I'm really glad CD Projekt Red didn't give up on it. There's some new DLC coming out soon, I'm told. Maybe it's already out by the time this video goes live or when you see it. I know I'm excited for it, and I'll probably have some thoughts on it. I might even make a video about it. If you want, you can subscribe to this channel to catch more videos as they come out, and if you're interested in helping me make this sort of thing a larger, more consistent part of my life, then you can find my Patreon in the description below, or on screen, right about now.